unit of the SIU Advocate Mtibi and the head of the Hawks, General Dr. Libya, and their delegations, and the AG who joins us this afternoon as well. Sorry, 7-minute or so delay. We were supposed to start at 4, just that we were transitioning from the house that was sitting, and it's on that basis that we'd like to apologize for having moved the meeting
Recording
from
in
2
progress.
o'clock to 4. The house was meeting on an urgent basis for the purposes of processing the Electoral Laws Amendment Bill, which flows out of a constitutional court judgment, and Parliament is chasing a deadline. We can't afford another extension. So when we scheduled the meeting, that item had not been placed on the agenda. And so we would like to thank you for your patience. Colleagues, I received an apology from the minister that he is traveling abroad and would not be here, and that the deputy minister would be here. But I don't see the DM. But I had received confirmation even yesterday during our meeting here. The notification came in that the DM would be attending. So what I'll do is I'll hand over to the DG to introduce his delegation, and it's the first time we are meeting with the DG physically. We've met online, but it's not the first time we are meeting him. But it's the first time we're meeting him in this role as the DG of the department. So he'll introduce his delegation, and then General Libya will do the same, Advocate Mtibi will do the same, and AG will do the same, for the purposes of familiarizing everybody who's here. And then we will proceed. Okay, colleagues, the presentation, generally the meeting is on the independent and forensic investigation of the National Skills Fund, which we, as indicated before, was commissioned at our behest as a committee following disclaimed audit outcomes into the National Skills Fund. We welcome the Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training. And the audit outcomes, as we've said, were not favorable to us. As we always say, disclaimer means konokshaya amanzi. And when it happens regularly, we become suspicious. And a report, an investigation was commissioned, Nexus. The report came out in March 2022, and we've been trying to source that report for a while. Unsuccessfully so, until we met to be informed that the report was still being processed. I'm summarizing. Then we received a letter from the minister asking us to invoke Rule 198 of the National Assembly rules, requesting that the report be treated as confidential. As an initial reaction, the committee was not agreeable to that, but subjected its disagreement with that request to Parliament Legal Services on the basis to get a concrete interpretation and the how part of the application of Rule 198. It came back and confirmed the committee position. I've been subsequently informed the minister on behalf of the committee that the committee has not acceded to the request to treat the report as confidential. I give this summary to enable the SIU and the Hawks to be on board in terms of how far we are. So that is why we are here. We will hand over to the Department of Higher Education and Training, led by the department, by the DM and the DG, to take us through their presentation, and then we will take it from there. So I think let's give them an opportunity to present. DM, I will give you the opportunity to make any initial remarks that you may want to make. And then we will proceed in that fashion. Colleagues, are you fine? All right. Maybe let me introduce the members who are present. Others will be joining us online because the committee in part will be traveling over the course of the weekend. So some members have already left for the SADCOPEC conference. At the far extreme right, my right, my perpendicular right, is the Honorable Mente. And then next to her is the Honorable Somio, who is also the chairperson of the Standing Committee on the Auditor General. My immediate right is the Honorable Hadebe with an H, is very particular about that. And he's the whip of the committee. Behind him is the Honorable Bucas. And then I am Mkula Wohleng, and I chair the committee. And then we are here with our full complement support staff. DM, over to you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee on Public Accounts, and also to the honorable members of the committee. Let me thank the committee chairperson for the opportunity to brief you on the report of the Department of Higher Education and Training on the investigation of the National Skills Fund emanating from the findings and recommendations of the Auditor General. I must say that this report to the committee has obviously been long overdue, and I think based on the context that you have given, Chairperson, and our various attempts to get to meet and present this report, but I think we appreciate the fact that we're ultimately here to present the report. I must start by indicating, Chair, that sometime, I think on the 13th of September this year, our minister briefed this committee on the completion of the forensic investigation, which he commissioned and presented a summary of the investigative findings, and that the committee has expressed its dissatisfaction with this approach and preferred the presentation of the raw report, as you've indicated, in spite of the concerns about the confidentiality and legal rights of the National Skills Fund's officials who were implicated in the report. And in spite of this appeal, we are here, as you, I think, have given us 10 days to release the report, which we have obliged to. The report was processed through to you on the 23rd of September 2022. But we also appear before this committee at a time when there are I think some concerns that we have, which are out there in the public domain, and in our view, could have been, or the basis thereof, could have essentially been caused by the interaction that we've had between the minister, the department, and the portfolio committee, but also given the interpretation of some of the events that took place. We want to place on the record, Chairperson and members of Parliament, that there is no intention either on the part of the ministry or the department to keep the report under wraps for malicious intentions or for ill intentions, or to sweep under the carpet any of the individuals who have been implicated in the report, and that in our view there was nothing untoward intended to shield any individuals from accounting and also from consequences that they should face based on the findings and recommendations of the forensic report, which took place under the as a result of the processes that we undertook as the department. I must say, Chair, that I think as soon as the AG brought these issues that relates to the National Skills Fund to our attention, we had wasted no time. And I think by the time we had an interaction with the with SCOPA sometime last year, we'd already indicated that there's a process to appoint a forensic services or Nexus Forensic Service to conduct a forensic investigation into the issues that were raised by the Auditor General. The report, the investigation process itself took 18 months to complete and was presented to the minister on the 17th of March this year. The minister subsequently presented the report or handed over the report to our DG for internal consequence management and external pursuance of criminal investigations against individuals who were implicated in the report. And so I thought that we need to start with setting that record, because I think a whole lot of confusion was created on the basis of the communications between the ministry, the department, and the chair of the ministry, the department, and the Committee on Public Accounts. Now, the DG would obviously take through the committee on the summary of the report and some of the key actions that we've taken to date. But based on the legal advice that has been received by the ministry and the department, already certain actions have been taken in order to ensure the implementation of the report. I must say, Chairperson, that to date, 5 officials have been placed on precautionary suspension. Secondly, the Directorate of Priority Crimes, known as the Hawks, has been approached. And in our engagement, and all required documentation has been handed over to them to facilitate criminal investigations. And those have been progressively sent through to the Hawks by the National Skills Fund. Criminal charges have been laid by the department with the South African Police Services. The NSF will blacklist companies that overcharged for equipment that was to be purchased, and the process of due presentation will precede the blacklisting action, and this will be completed in our, we hope, by the end of 2022. The National Skills Fund will also approach companies that did not deliver equipment, yet they were paid for, and demand reimbursement. But also our legal unit in the department is in the process of procuring the services of a panel of external legal expertise to oversee the process of determination of charges and appropriate sanction against all officials of the National Skills Fund materially implicated in the forensic investigation. And on the system side of things, the Skills Fund itself is showing signs of noticeable improvement in that the 2021-2022 financial year Auditor General of South Africa audit report shows a movement away from 2 consecutive disclaimers to a qualified report, because I think if you recall, part of the concern of this committee was, what else are we doing in order to avert this situation into the future? The Skills Fund is in the process of developing a new audit action plan, which will address the current and other lingering findings by the AG as pointed out in the National Skills Fund Management Report, and the ministerial task team appointed by the minister to review the business model of the National Skills Fund in July 2021 has completed its task and presented its recommendation to the minister on the 30th of June 2022. The implementation of the NSF system remodeling recommendations are also scheduled to be contextualized and implemented from 1 July 2022 to 30 June 2023. I must say, Chairperson, that together with the minister, we take this matter quite seriously. The fact that this process involves in total an amount of 2.5 billion rand, that is which as reported, and I think context needs to be given in that regard, but the fact that public funds have been misappropriated or mismanaged, we take this matter seriously, and that we are in no way having any intention of trying to shield those who should face the consequences of their action, be they criminal or be they as a result of their inability to oversee and manage these resources. We also wish to assure this committee and the public that we have absolutely nothing to hide as it relates to the concern raised by the AG on the National Skills Fund, and we support the work that the AG is doing, and that we're working together with the AG to also help understand our team at the National Skills Fund, how important the AG's work is. And so in our presentation, the DG, Dr. Nkosinathi Sishi, will give the detail of some of the areas that I have highlighted. We'll be quite happy to respond to the questions that comes up from the committee. We of course have some of the officials from the department, but I think more importantly, the DG will be leading us with regards to this presentation. Thank you, Chair. With your permission, if I can head over to the DG.
Thank you very much, DM, for the introduction and the summary of the sequence of events from the department's perspective. DG, you can proceed, but maybe let's just finalize on the introductions first and then proceed quickly. DG, over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon to honorable members of the committee and the distinguished senior officials of government present, and thanking our DM for his remarks. We have the advisor of the minister, Mr. Mandela, with me here present on my left, Chair. We also further have the acting Deputy Director General for the skills branch in the department, Mr. Mabuza Ngubane, on my left as well, and behind me There are two senior officials as well of our department, from the legal services of the department, Mr. Tumisan Makai. And next to him, from the office of the DG, Mr. Kanyiso Sonti.
DG, General.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members, the Deputy Minister, the senior officials from both the Department of Higher Education and my colleagues from the SIU. Myself, Lieutenant General Lebia, the National Head of the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigation. I am accompanied by the Acting Divisional Commissioner for Priority Crime Offenses, who is Major General Nkosi sitting behind me. And I'm also accompanied by Brigadier Maginyani on my left. Is currently the acting component head for serious commercial crime. His permanent position is the commander, the section head of serious economic offenses. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General. Advocate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and honorable members of SCOPA. May I also greet the Deputy Minister, Minister Mang. We are appearing today, myself joined by our communications head, Mr. Keza Khanyaku. I'm also joined by my colleague sitting with me, Mr. Lekheto. He's the Chief National Investigating Officer who investigates national matters, including national departments and national SOEs. Well, myself, I'm Andy Motivi. I'm the head of the Special Investigating Unit. Honorable Chair and DM, this is the team from the Special Investigating Unit. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Advocate. AG.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon to yourself and honorable members, the Deputy Minister, the DG, and the colleagues from the department and NSF. I am Khaboko Mapi. I'm the Business Executive in the Auditor General of South Africa. On my left is Zamahlangu Mdijwa, the Senior Manager responsible for the NSF and the Department of Higher Education and Training. And across the other side, I also have Mr. Siyanda Saki, the Senior Manager responsible for our stakeholder liaison. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, AG. All right. DG, over to you to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
I'm not in control of the presentation.
You assisting? Oh, Mr. Kabinde, when you need to move on to the next slide, you'll indicate. You just say next slide.
Okay, all right.
This
That's
room, unfortunately, was designed in haste to sort of accommodate these kind of things, so the connections are a bit problematic.
Thank you, Chair. Chairperson, honorable members, our Deputy Minister and colleagues, in compiling the presentation, we have tried to capture the purpose of the presentation, provide a set of legislative considerations that were made, and these would have informed the development of terms of reference for the investigation, but also informed the investigation itself. Some kind of criteria adopted and methodology, which I think in the report itself is quite explicit and detailed. The report further provides limitations as well. There are terms of reference projected, and the specific projects that were identified for the investigation, particularly the recommendations that in each of the projects that were identified were made. I think that this is what the presentation seeks to do, to just lift those issues. But somewhere, Chair, we are also trying to just surprise the members of the committee with what it is we are doing, and keep updating this, considering that since we also presented the document, some work also continues in the department, and we trust that we'll be able to just keep the committee, as updated and as far as it's possible for us. In the purpose, we articulate the purpose as to present the report of the investigation by the Department of the National Skills Fund, emanating from the findings and recommendations of the Auditor General, South Africa. And secondly, we present to this committee the progress update and how we are dealing with the recommendations going forward. I think the Minister has made reference to our attempt to request that there is some kind of classification for the report as a confidential report, and we have stated the reasons for us to do so. And I think that has been dealt with. And I think in your own opening remarks, Chair, you've also, put the matter to rest as far as I'm concerned, by indicating how the committee has dealt with. And I think our department moves on from that point to further do our best to comply with the requirements that oversight has regarding this report. From that point, therefore, Chair, I wish to go straight to the selection criteria for the projects that were investigated. First is to distinguish between the teaching and learning and infrastructure related projects. So an attempt was made by the investigators to ensure that the coverage of the projects that are selected are not just selecting one area, but they cover a variety of areas, so that they can give us a holistic view of what could be the problem with the NSF. There is also an attempt to provide a provincial allocation so that the projects selected are not just a picture emanating from a provincial, one or two provinces, but to cover as far as possible, as many provinces as possible. In terms of the teaching and learning projects themselves are also distinguished between those that have to do with learning tools and learning assets procurement, as well as those that deal with single suppliers and multiple suppliers, as well as other entities. I think the first item on terms of reference is important because it provides the parameters within which the investigation operated. And this was guided, as we indicate, they're guided by the 2019-20 report of the Auditor General of South Africa, where the Auditor General was not able to verify up to 2.5 billion worth of expenditure, and as reported in the NSF annual financial statement. And therefore the projects selected are within that category of what concerned the Auditor General. The determination as well of if NSF officials intentionally concealed information from the auditors. This was very important, and I think in the manner in which the report reports on the findings, you get a sense that this was directed, and I see this when I look at the recommendations that are being made. And I think, Chair, I'm not going to take each and every one of the terms as indicated there, because we've captured them exactly as they appear in the report itself. But I thought I must just highlight the key one. I think it was also important for us, or it's important for me to indicate that there were additional terms that were to be an option of the department once the investigation is completed, and there are three of them. One was if the department could work with the service provider to engage with employees relations of the departments and employer representatives to assist in the drafting of finalizing of charge sheets and all that comes with it, assisting with the presentation of evidence and recommendation of course of action. These were in addition, in the event the department thought this would be the way to go. We try in this slide, Chair, on projects selected. Yeah, that one. We try in this slide, Chair, in a narrow kind of way to just lift for the honorable members and colleagues, you know, at a glance, to be able to see which are these projects we are talking about. And in this slide, not only do we do this, we also try to indicate in each of the projects as reflected in which province that particular project was selected from. And on your right, an indication of the category that at which that project would come from, whether it is an infrastructure project or whether it is categorized as teaching and learning related, and so forth, and so on and so forth. We mentioned all of these 10 projects there, and later on we try then to speak to the recommendations of the investigators in each area that is identified. There's a set of legislations that inform the work that we have done, and we cite some of them which are key and informs our approach going forward, and starting with the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa, particularly Section 217 of the Constitution, that speaks to the procurement issues, and it states that when an organ of state in the national, provincial, and local sphere of government, or any other institution identified in the national legislation, contracts for goods and services, it must do so in accordance with a system which is fair, equitable, transparent, competitive, and cost-effective. We cite other legislation that speaks to the provision of our Constitution, to keep ourselves in track with what we have said earlier. With your permission, therefore, Chair, I wish to speak directly to the recommendations that were made in respect of each of the 10 projects that were selected. Obviously, there will be limitations when you are only capturing recommendations. I think it would assist to cross-reference each of these recommendations with the report itself, where it provides information that is useful. For example, in the report, it specified, for example, what is the value of each of the projects, and so that once you get into the detail of the recommendations, the context would be made. And I think somewhere in the Deputy Minister's opening remarks, the DM makes an observation that in some of the cases where the allocation to that project was of a specific amount, some significant evidence was provided to show how the expenditure was conducted in that regard. But the report also is very specific, where there was absolutely no evidence provided in that regard. So we start with this project, Ikono Lako Women and Youth Primary Cooperative Limited, a service provider based in KwaZulu-Natal. I will try to be a little bit more elaborate with this project, just so that the methodology of how we're presenting is clear. This is a project about the training of cooperatives, women and youth on animal related studies. And I think this is really, really important because according to this report and how the evidence is presented, there's a detail of how, for example, the requests for the initiation of the project was conducted up to the point when the problems were identified at a later stage. According to Section 34 of the Prevention of Combating of Corruption Activities Act, any person who holds a position of authority and who knows and ought reasonably to have known or suspected that any other person has committed an offense, or theft, which is your PRECA Act, has an obligation, even if there is suspicion or cause of such, suspicion or knowledge that this matter is reported to the police. And on that basis, the recommendations regarding this particular project, which is more about the rabbits farming, what was going to happen in this project was that a production of rabbits will happen, and then there will be a supply of these to the market. In the report, a lot of details are provided around, for example, how the approvals of this project was conducted. And we make certain observations about the manner in which the report, the project was presented, approved, the monitoring that was conducted in this regard, the issues that were picked up during the course of the monitoring of this project, omissions that were made. All of this is provided in the report. But the investigators conclude that based on the evidence presented to them, there is certainly reasonable suspicion that in this particular project, there was fraud, there could have been money laundering, there could have been theft, and therefore they recommend that the department report this matter to the Directorate for Priority Crime Investigations in terms of Section 34 of the Prevention of Combating of Corruption for further investigation. We also should request that any outstanding matters, for example, those who refused to provide the evidence as requested, that this matter is further pursued, so that they can be held to account. And thirdly, that the officials involved in the completion of site visit forms must be confronted with the discrepancies and failures of their monitoring to verify the project as expected. Upon obtaining their versions, the NSF were requested to consider whether to take disciplinary steps in terms of Section 57 of the PFMA. This is a recommendation regarding this particular project. And I think in the next 9 projects, we capture these recommendations precisely as they are being made, and then indicate what then as a department we have done with the recommendations presented to us. The next project is the of a trading enterprise, and a similar conclusion is being made that
DG, no, thanks, and apologies for interjecting. I'm the acting chair for now, whilst the chair is outside. We have received the report, and I would request that, because what we currently interested in, I think it's on your slide 18, the progress update and the way forward. In order for us to ascertain whether or not enough work has been done, where we are not satisfied in relation to the manner in which we propose to deal with these matters, members will indicate as such. So I would request, instead of going into details on each and every case, just summarize and stick to salient point that you want to bring to our attention. But the key and primary focus for us is the progress that has been made thus far and the way forward in relation to how you intend dealing with these matters.
Thank you for that, Chair. We will skip the recommendations.
But I'm not stopping you if in some of these cases there's issues that you want to bring to our attention that we need to take into consideration in relation to the way forward. If there are any issues that may hamper a certain aspect of your proposed way forward that you want to bring to our attention, so that when we resolve on what needs to be done and the way forward, we take all factors into consideration.
I think I will skip the 10 program. I think later on, perhaps if there are questions, we'll go back to it. But I do feel that under slide number 16, under slide 16, on conclusion, we look just for a moment on the general conclusions and the general recommendations, because there are specific recommendations which I've covered for each project, but there are also general conclusions about the holistic view of the system, as well as the general recommendations that are being made, which I think are important. I'm also not going to over elaborate on that, Chair. During the investigation, it has been found that although it did not specifically form part of the scope, it was noted that there are various deficiencies that existed generally regarding the respective grant processes of the NSF. I think if we go back to the terms of reference, you can see that this was specific as well, just right from the start, that we were interested in establishing the extent to which non-compliance happened, but we are also interested in the corrective measures. What are the deficiencies and what it is that we are going to do about those deficiencies. And there are 7 of these that Nexus presents to us. Firstly, the issue of due diligence regarding the projects that are conducted as part of the initial process. And the fact that in terms of the findings from the respective officials, the officials, they seem to differ materially, and the findings are seemingly not always considered when applications are considered or approved, which therefore means it is possible that different officials will arrive at different conclusions about the value proposition by any service provider who wish to compete for services, and therefore they believe that there is a need for NSF to look into this issue. The second one is the technical evaluations that NSF officials conducted, and their recommendations are made for due diligence, but it appears that officials do not always apply their minds when conducting their evaluations, and we're not. And it was noted that very little research was done to establish whether a real need exists for the respective proposed projects. Chair, if I were to just, at that point, just take you back to the first project, Econo project, which I suggested that it is a project about the rabbits. At the time that that project was approved, the one company in South Africa that trades in rabbits was under liquidation, which therefore means when it was approved, it should have been considered that the market was not ready for another service provider in this area, because the established service provider was struggling to an extent of being financially in distress. And I think this is the part which I think is crucial for us to consider when Nexus concludes that perhaps NSF needs to strengthen its capacity for research, its capacity, and it must apply its mind on better than it was doing. In the respect of this project, Chair, there is 80% of all rabbits are consumed by China, and therefore any new entry into the business space either needed to compete with the existing liquidated service provider or find alternative markets. And we don't find in our evidence that there was an attempt to advise properly on this project, which seems very good project and a good project proposition. Also, you established that there were good collaborations between agricultural colleges that are responsible for training, as well as some of the aspects of the project, the training that was provided, and the fact that most of the training was registered. You get a sense that that aspect was well taken care of. But when it comes to this part, this was not done. And so we make this point. The third point is that site visits that are done quarterly or must be done quarterly prior to approving payments of tranches these physical inspections are not done, or incorrect information or detail is reflected on the reports. I think this speaks to the capacity of NSF, and I think that this chair is also, another issue that is being raised. Bank accounts do not reflect the name of the NSF. And despite this discrepancy, we found instances where NSF still approved bank accounts. There is in the memorandum of agreements between NSF and all service providers, a requirement that a dedicated bank account is opened for each of these projects. So if, for example, a service provider would not have done this, you will expect that NSF therefore would not transfer monies because they would have verified that the account has been opened that is dedicated to this or not, and not only come at the end when there are problems and then be surprised that this was not done. And I think this is also clear in the recommendations. The investigators have also noted that there is a common trend that as soon as payments are received by the service providers, money is transferred to a second or third account from where the funds were dispersed. And these accounts are not monitored and the expenditure is not confirmed. And I think this is where the Auditor General really was frustrated during the audit process, because when the Auditor General requested information regarding these third parties, the officials could not access these documents. And in fact, eventually it led to a disclaimed opinion a number of times as a result of the fact that NSF, firstly, their systems do not assist in getting us to, arrest this from happening. Third-party invoices are not submitted to NSF as proof of expenditure. And lastly, that approved learners regarding learnerships are not provided to the NSF for verification. Those are 7 key conclusions, which I think overall define the holistic, systemic weaknesses within the entity, and our interventions will be tested on the basis of on how this is then dealt with. There are conclusions that are made based on this. Firstly, that the responsible employees at NSF must conduct a detailed and proper due diligence regarding the potential service providers, and that those entrusted to conduct technical evaluations must be properly qualified. And I think this speaks to the quality, within the system and the capacity of the system in this regard. That site visits must be conducted, and all the deliverables in terms of the MOA must be verified and confirmed prior to approval of payment. NSF must also monitor cash flow from the respective ring-fence bank accounts. And the last one, that service providers attach all third-party invoices to the respective and quarterly reports and claims. I think, Chair, that to us, present the holistic view of this. May I indicate that, Chair, the progress update that is reflected here, there could be additions to it based on the fact that at the time that we presented the report, work still continues. And if we are required to just add on top of this, we will do so. But I will apply myself to what is in front of the members at this point in time, that we immediately, once the report was handed to us by the service provider, started our own internal processes, which involved our ethics unit within the department, to then look into the report, including our legal services, with a view to advising the course of action that needed to be done. And that at a particular stage, when we recognize the the sensitivities of the issues that are raised, we also approach the state attorney to assist us with the sourcing of additional capacity, particularly legal capacity within the department, work that has been done and completed, and we move on with the benefit of the support of the state attorney in that regard. The reporting of the 10 areas according to the report, also this having been made, as well as the fact that interactions between ourselves and the Hawks to deal with the implicated service providers and staff with corruption and criminal charges being the focus, because obviously as a department we are limited in terms of what internally we can do. That which relates to corruption and criminal charges is in the purview of the Hawks, as we have started that journey with that. But as a department, we are working as well to make sure that all those documents that are requested and required are provided to the law enforcement. Internal disciplinary processes have started. I think in the remarks by the minister, he makes an observation that thus far there are some officials already that have been identified who must be held to account, but that work continues. Many more others are still coming because more information gets available in these processes, which we are working hand in hand with our experts. After convictions have been secured, there can then be a process to ensure that the department is able to recoup those monies that were irregularly expended. And we are very clear that this is where we want to go in terms of this process. I also need to indicate, Chair, that prior to the appointment of this investigation, the minister had already appointed the ministerial task team to look into the business processes and operations of the NSF. And that report has now been submitted. By the end of July, the department has received that report, and we have then started a process of cross-referencing the report of the ministerial task team regarding the business processes of NSF, so that not only we are looking at what the investigation has discovered, but we also continue to develop the capacity of NSF to improve its governance and systems. Based on the findings of the Auditor General, which has flagged a number of weaknesses in the system, business systems, we have working with the Auditor General established an audit steering committee. And that audit steering committee looks into not just a particular report, but all RFIs, requests for information that the Auditor General had made, because it was clear that there was non-cooperation at the time of the audit that was cited by the Auditor General. And we've spent some time working on this, and I think we will credit the Auditor General for the progress that has been made thus far. Workshop has been conducted by the Auditor General to all officials of the NSF in respect of ensuring that we are on a path of compliance and non-tolerance to non-compliance in the department and in NSF. A number of meetings have been held by the Audit Steering Committee, which includes a meeting at which a request of information and the communication of audit findings by the Auditor General have been tabled, and audit compliance related matters being dealt with, so that in the manner in which we deal with this matter, we do not only limit ourselves in terms of the focus of this investigation, but we also look into other weaknesses which internal audit reports of the department also points out, and also look into other audit generals, for example, repeat findings of the Auditor General. All of these become the purview of a committee that we have established to look at this issue. Consultative meetings as well, at which the Auditor General have provided us with reports in terms of progress that has been made, has been done, and in response to the Auditor General's feedback that we've received, we also have had audit debriefs and an ethical conduct workshop which was conducted, and we specify when that happened, and the ministerial task team report and how we are using that report to strengthen the processes of the department. And I think, Chair, this is how far we can go in terms of our projects. The last slide in our presentation, Chair, provides a kind of a graphic roadmap towards full implementation of recommendations of the Auditor General by providing a kind of a sense of how we are pulling, for example, from the NSF business model reform, document that has been compiled by the ministerial task team, which assists us in building the capacity of the NSF. At the same time, continuing with our internal disciplinary processes, which we are focused upon at this point in time. Chairperson, I submit our presentation humbly.
Phela ubunikeze mina intambo.
Sengibuyile.
Ngicela ukuzibuyisela kuwe official.
My apologies for stepping out. There was a family emergency I had to deal with. It's unlike me to leave the chair, so my apologies for that. It's not out of disrespect for the meeting. I apologize. Thanks, Honorable Hateb. Okay, I think we will go to colleagues unless the SIU and the Hawks, maybe let's start there if they've got any comment at this point, and then colleagues, we come to you. The DM has said, Lieutenant General, that they've referred some matters to you, so on, and then we'll go to the SIU. But if there's none, that is also perfectly in order, and then colleagues will go to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. We appreciate the presentation by the department. Firstly, I think we shall just indicate that indeed the documents have been presented to us this month, and a case docket has been opened at Pretoria Central, which we have got a case number. And then as the investigation progresses, this docket will be split so that each project is incorporated in its own case docket. So at this initial stage, the matters are being looked at in one docket. There are already 10 steps that have been taken after receipt of this, which obviously it is some systematic search for the truth that we will not reveal in the public platform, but there are already steps that have been taken since. I think that the recommendations that have been made, we have noted on them. some of them will obviously be corrected, not necessarily that we deal with them as they are reflected. We work closely with other entities such as the National Prosecuting Authority. I think that there is already a plan that is unfolding as to how we should be approaching those type of inquiries. I think at this stage, the matter which I observed in one of the slides, suggesting that our government fraud unit will be dealing with this, we already have an investigation team which is under the serious economic offenses. That is the person in charge of that environment is sitting next to me. So the matter is already allocated to a specific unit. So those are the comments that I can make at this stage. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant General. Advocate.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, honorable members, and once more, DM. We thank the DG for the presentation. We've read it even before the meeting. We would like to really just pronounce that there's a whole lot of work that the investigators covered, as it appears in the report, and we can see that a consideration was made in terms of the recommendations, particularly from the general conclusions and general recommendations that we have seen. We have, however, noticed that there's an opportunity where we could probably engage further with the department, because we realize that the report as it is, first and foremost, our main observation was that it doesn't really cover the civil litigation part. The recommendations are made based on the findings to the DPCI, which is proper and appropriate. There's recommendations for disciplinary process, which is proper and appropriate. But we've noticed that the missing part, and again, this is an area where we would really like to engage with the department and see that there will probably be an opportunity for us as the special investigating unit to assist the department. And obviously, without going through the detailed observations, the DG makes an accurate observation when he starts the presentation in terms of the constitutional injunction around 217, section 217 of the Constitution, and of course, related provisions of the PFMA. If I reading through, the report, and we'll probably continue to just review, but there's an assumption. There's an assumption that the procurement process may have been followed appropriately, and I'm just making that assumption based on the following observations: that the investigators in many instances are making observations around non-compliance with memorandum of understandings that they have entered into with these various service providers. We've seen that in various of these projects, and non-compliance with memorandum of understandings could probably give rise to sort of breaches of contracts that's there but we haven't really observed, and we believe it's not an oversight. We haven't really observed and realized that there is a specific pronouncement that the procurement process was followed or not followed. And based on that, we would probably have expected to see that, and we're really making these observations because we deal with these matters on a regular basis, that if there was that kind of finding that the procurement process was not followed, what would then naturally follow legally would be to then say, you know, what happens to the contracts, that they should be set aside. And then, of course, what follows is the recovery process. And I'm talking more on the civil litigation side. We've dealt with the criminal referrals, which is fine. I'm sure our colleagues in the Hawks will deal with that and deal with it appropriately. So with regard to the process, we've realized that in one of the projects, I think it's Yikono Lako, there's an indication that there was unsolicited proposal presented in this regard. Right. So nothing wrong with unsolicited proposals and so on, but there are processes that needs to be followed. We didn't see that there's a pronouncement whether, you know, those processes were appropriately followed. I'm just making an example, Honorable Chair and Honorable Members. And if we look at the report generally, particularly in sections dealing with limitations, and those limitations could probably be, and we believe so, that it's because of that, perhaps the investigators did not have the legal powers to do so. This is the call it the subpoena of bank statements. In many instances, they make pronouncements that they did not have all the bank statements, and there's a pronouncement that due to unavailability of bank statements, we were unable to verify the drawdowns, right? Of course, then where there's a reasonable suspicion of corruption and so on, matters referred to the DPCI, which is fine. There's another project where again they indicate that they could not verify payments from NSF to DDI. I think this is DTB development. The bank statements were not provided to the investigators. Of course, they in that event also recommend blacklisting. So as we said, without going into detail, Honorable Chair, while the area of corruption, fraud, theft, that's the criminal law part, the criminal investigations will be conducted and conducted effectively. There's an area which we believe that the department could immensely benefit if we really dig into that as well, to ensure that what the department lost is recovered. There's a whole lot of areas where in other areas where the value for money, it's also whether the department got value for money, so to speak. And this is the exercise we do in various of our investigations. That part also didn't come out in so many words, and we believe that is a significant area which would then, amongst others, just determine what is it that the department got. And the other area, of course, and we just from a perspective of our mandate, issues around maladministration, malpractice, which of course, if you look at the recommendations, one would assume that those are the, what we call in our area, systemic recommendations to improve the system processes and so on. And improve the administration. So Honorable Chair and Honorable Members, we having read through all and listening to the department, and even the last slide, which has got a schematic depiction, there's an aspect of the civil litigation which we believe could be plugged in, and we dig deep, we dive deep into that, and ensure that the department recovers what's due. But another area is accountability levels. The levels of accountability. There's recommendations for disciplinary processes to be considered. Having read through, the report, we couldn't really, sort of determine, and I'm sure the department would do that as part of the disciplinary process in terms of determining the accountability levels, and because that part is very, very critical from a consequence management perspective. And the regulatory and administrative actions that needs to be done, blacklisting, of course, and then we've heard that the department will do that. But there's various other regulatory infractions that could have occurred, issues around income tax or infractions around income tax legislation. So we would probably look at the myriad of all of this and determine what is it that really the state has lost and needs to be recovered. So the ultimate view we're making, Honorable Chair, is that having engaged with the report, we believe that we could now engage with the department further, and then from our side pursue a proclamation that would then enable us as the special investigating unit to assist the department to plug this significant gap that has been, in our view, left out or omitted by the investigators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, to Lieutenant General and Advocate, for those insights. I think they are very helpful insofar as putting everything into context for us. Honorable Somia, we will go to questions now, and then I think we're going to have a early evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Somia.
Thank you, Chair. The Deputy Minister, DG, the General Bianis team, and Advocate, and your team, the team from the AG. Substantively, I think we must appreciate this as a step forward, first step forward. I'm saying first step forward because there is some determination from the findings of the Auditor General. One question from me is that the determination would have been as a result or invoked by that report of the AG. So it will come as the base, a solid base for what is happening now. I take it from their sampling. Their sampling, which they can confirm probably, is 30 companies. I take it that is that 30 companies are sampled by the AG, which has helped them qualitatively to arrive at a finding, which we now were taking further in terms of these investigations. And then the sampling, which has been undertaken by or through these investigations, is 10 companies.
So 10 versus 30, which somewhat arrives probably at a similar, but the in-depth analysis of a problem. If the determination in terms of the objective instance is that let's take this process, let's find the problem, and let's deal with the problem, and therefore you can't create a limitation. You can't do so through a creation of a limitation for your house clearance, and that house clearance is based on the 30 solid basis for a finding by the AG. So why do you want to be comfortable with only 10 out of that sample of 30? So something which tells you that this thing might be bigger, and you are only creating a limitation for yourselves only to look into a very limited sample of 10 into a bigger picture of things. So I would ask then, how many companies at the audit period were dealing with? How many the NSF has them in a basket, the totality of companies which are there. And therefore the sampling concerned is indicative of problematic instances which could vary based on the sectoral nature of those entities which have got interest within the skills fund. And the basis and push for us to correct the problem could even get into a bigger number, which is going to assist in the actual cleanup of these things. Don't you think, therefore, if you are going to make that consideration, don't you think that it's possible because it's in your hands to say, here we are, the totality is 50 companies that we're dealing with, and let's place all the 50, because the sample is telling us about the problem. And that problem is not limited to the 10, which you've discovered, not limited to the 30, which the AG has put on the table. And therefore, you have the authority now to say that there's some kind of a being informed position that I must probably place all these companies and investigate and look into whether there has been ill intents on their own operation around these matters. And therefore you will rest and say, I've done my job in a way. So don't you think that as the department, this is telling that story and is giving you that energy to say, let me go all out and deal with this problem, because there is a problem. You see out there, it should not be limited into the 10, because already the 30 has been handled by the AG. So I want to check from the department that this investigation, is it not driving you towards such? And if not, why not? You see, and if therefore indeed that is that drive, already I think through what Advocate Motibi is talking about on those limitations, and the team which was doing this in forensic has unearthed it as well, that no, it was difficult to find bank statements, it was difficult to find these, and we're making this kind of a recommendation, having not found this kind of information, but we continue to make these kind of conclusions going forward. And it's a fact that probably because of the limitations which are imposed by the nature of investigators, which were there, they couldn't have power to do certain things. And therefore there's justification when you refer to the Hawks to deal with these matters on the criminal instance, they should go deeper around these matters. And if possible, from your own consideration, refer further in terms of these aspects out there. There's somewhat justification in terms of the expectation of justice administratively and as well the existential matters of accountability. So it might be possible that the department must have that consideration, have that deliberation, and through that discussion, frame some form of an urgent way to get into actionable exercise, which is then going to go to the SIU to assist in that regard as a matter of urgency. And then you would have fulfilled what the AG has found out, and you have assisted your administrative capability in enhancing good governance and areas of financial accountability in depth, one way or the other. The last area which I wanted to get into is the area which I think that you know, this is happening at a time when you're not stopping to spend. You have to spend. You see, because on an annual basis there are actions that you must somewhat continue. But in terms of your administrative exercise, within your powers, both administrative and executive, have been confronted by this nature of things, it might be possible that even those who are contained in that huge assemble are still continuing doing business in the usual form, in the usual way, with yourselves. And the danger of the continuum, which is a bit limping in a scale, could get even further into a problematic area. Is there any model that you are following to then get closer into what is actually happening there in two ways? One, your administration was off the ball, you know, at the time when these things are happening. Why do you rely on them? Why are you going to rely on the same systems that have somewhat dealt this kind of a problematic expense in your own way, in as far as the skills fund is concerned? And I know that in terms of governance, there's a form that you are doing in terms of the improving the level of governance through the introduction of the new model outward there. But to arrest the problem while things are happening, what is it? How are you modeling your administrative processes so that you avoid the recurrence of what we have seen currently? That is a matter which I think you must look into as a matter of urgency. And lastly, Chair, is that in appreciation of the fact that there is this kind of work which has been undertaken, it looks like that there is appetite to move from these forensics appointed, then you go to the legal experts appointed to do something else, and there is these kind of specialties who are going to be appointed to do this and that and so forth. So in wanting to clear waters, there's as well a risk and a potential of muddying the waters. You see, something which might be not intentional in a way, but to want to right the wrong. So what is it that in a bigger scale that the ministry is moving towards in terms of the arresting the current occurrence within that system? I'm asking this because, one, you have acting individuals in your senior position, acting CFO currently, might not know acting from where, whether within the same system, institutional or what have you. There'll be acting chief executive, you see within the system and so forth. And then you look into the expenditure which happens within that, which is a huge expenditure. And those who are responsible for that expenditure are active individuals. That is a huge risk in terms of sustenance, predictable operational environment in terms of financial accountability. So those are the kinds of areas which I thought I must probably emphasize going forward to find a better way of sustaining the actual good practice in the institution. But I appreciate the fact that you have the Hawks in. It might be strengthened even further if you go out and look into the involvement of the SIU in the areas that are involved. And the chair, you might probably on our behalf look into the scenario of wanting to ensure that there is engagement between the department and the SIU in that regard. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mente, and then Honorable Hadebe. All right. Mam Zibula on the platform, you will indicate if you've got a question. Honorable Mente.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good afternoon to everyone. Chair, the first question will go to the Deputy Minister. I think somehow Ubaba Somyo tried to ask the same question, but my interest is when we were appointing a forensic company to investigate, even against the advice of Parliament through the SCOPA, that that's the route which is going to be somewhat delaying the process and really problematic in a sense that there are legislative limitations with private companies, which within the SIU, it becomes much easier, as well as the scope. Maybe before you agreed on the terms of reference with the investigators, you were not aware of the scope. And now that the scope was reduced to only 10 companies, didn't that on its own give you uncomfortable rationale of such a decision making? Because we are speaking about a full financial year and the year before, and wherein the AG says, I'm unable to move in terms of auditing because none of the companies or service providers that are doing business with the NS, the Skills Fund, is able to work with me. None, zero. There was no comfort whatsoever of, at least we are dealing with 50% of this. There was no comfort. The indication was that 100% of this expenditure can be proved. So wasn't there any discomfort that forensic investigators will not assist us? And it became worse when the scope was reduced to just 10. I'm asking this question so that we try and avoid a situation where, again, what Babu Somyo is asking, because the state has to operate, people have to be empowered, children must go to school. And there is no way to dictate within the system DG, that who do I continue doing business with? Who do I stop doing business with? Because I have at least 30 companies according to AG, but that was just a sample in an array of companies. Right now, there's a predicament. The DG has to continue and the department to deliver the services. But who do you work with right now? That's the problem. So I'm asking this question and trying to avoid a situation where another sister department is saying forensic investigation is much better in this case than taking all of this and give it to the institutions that have capacity and have no limitations in whatsoever. Because reading this report, almost, I think all 10, the limitations were at a point where the company cannot force them to give them anything. Unlike the SI that can force its way into anything. So I'm trying to find out from the deputy minister if perhaps we can get some surety or what was the rationale behind all of this. The second question is to the DG. In terms of all these departments, these service providers, especially the 10 that already now, they are found to be in a position that they are in. Your forensic investigators are saying these are the people that we have a suspicion that there was a flow of money and there's maladministration, corruption, and all of that. Are they from the 10 that are there on the database right now, still receiving money from the state? And what is it that they are doing? Then the other one is, are we now in a position to say when the Auditor General comes, we can say there's College A, we can point the location of College A, we can prove through either hard copies or electronic copies that the flow of funding is legitimate from the head office to the recipient at the end of the line. Is the person at the end receiving the service that they are supposed to receive? Can we get that comfort now that next day we're not going to be finding ourselves with the report of the AG saying, disclaimed, I can't find anything again at NSF. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mente. Honorable Adebe.
Thank you, Chair. Let me, all protocol observed, and welcome to everyone, DM and your team. Chair, I find comfort in what the Deputy Minister has alluded to, that the Ministry, both the DM and the Minister, are taking this matter seriously. And I think it's what was also expressed by the Minister in our previous engagement. So all the proposal and the recommendation that will come from our side, I think will find resonant and will be supported by the Ministry. Chair, if my memory serves me well, on the 8th of February in our meeting, when we raised the issue of SIU forming part, I think the Minister indicated that they've consulted SIU, and there was general acceptance of using the investigator, but there was a proviso that once the investigation has been concluded, the report will be furnished to you for you to act upon. And that was also re-emphasized in our previous meeting, that the SIU has to come in. So I'd like to also reiterate the stance that was taken on the 8th of February 2022 and in our previous meeting, and now that the SIU has to come on board where there are limitations in terms of mandate and power, the SIU has to act as such, with the question of whether or not have you been finished with the report by the minister as promised on the 8th of February. So I just want to get that clarity, Chair. The deputy DM, when you spoke, you indicated that there are 5 officials that are on precautionary suspension. And when I was reading the progress and the way forward, it only indicates that there are internal disciplinary processes that are underway. But it doesn't give us a sense of how many officials have been served with letters of the allegation against them, whether or not charge sheets have been drafted and served to members. Remember last time when we were meeting with you, the issue of this matter becoming confidential was on the basis that not all the officials have been afforded an opportunity to respond to the allegations. So one of the recommendations in terms of way forward in quarterly reports that we'll be proposing and receiving, we should get a detailed, and we're not saying give us names of the individuals at this stage, but give us the sense of how broad is this corruption that is taking place and how many officials are involved, whether or not everyone that is alleged to have embarked on this allegation have been served with notices for DC. There's a mention of the ministerial task team report that is submitted to the department. Can we be finished with such a report so that we also understand what is contained in that report? If there are any issues that we need to take up, so be it, Chair. So I would like to re-emphasize the issue of SIU in relation to civil and litigation aspect, Chair, so that at least we make sure that there are no loopholes and everyone that might have been alleged to have committed these acts of misappropriation of taxpayers' money is brought to book, Chair. So that will be my proposal. The next question that I have, you indicating that there are certain documentation that are required by the Hawks, and you are currently compiling or collecting those documents. When are you going to submit, and when was the request made? Ours is to expedite the process. It has been dragging for quite some time. If you have already submitted those documents, that will be great. But we want to emphasize the need to expedite the process so that we see justice being done, Chair. Those are the issues. And I've just noticed, Chair, that Wabusomi has been saying for the last time more than 3 times. And I was thinking,
Leave that part to me.
And he was accusing me of being the one that's going to drag this meeting, but he's been saying it for the last time 3 times. Thank you, Chair.
All right. For the last time. All right. Yeah. I think earlier on, colleagues, I omitted giving AG an opportunity when we were getting the sectoral responses to what had been presented. So I'll start there with AG. Sithi Zulu, njengabavusi benyamazane, because you gave us the disclaimers, and so that's why we are here. So my apologies in that regard. So AG team, over to you, and then DG will come to you, and then go to the respected heads of the law enforcement agency institutions here. AG, over to you.
Thank you so much, Honorable Chair. Thanks to DG for the presentation. I actually listened to the comment from Honorable Somyo and Honorable Menda. I think they covered an audit element. But I think the point I would want to just emphasize is that, yes, we audited a sample, and Honorable Somyo is right. Our sample would have been a minimum of 30, right? And if you look at the outcome of the investigation, it basically says for all the projects that I've selected, I have a problem one way or the other. And from the audit element, we will then tell you that your problem is the population. So we basically then tell you that that full amount of the skills expenditure need to be looked at. which would mean that there's an opportunity then for the entity and the department to say, how do we take the findings that are suggesting that 100% of the amount has got a problem? How do we respond in a manner that closes everything? Because that's where the audit will go, really. In the next year, because even in the current year, we would have still had a limitation on that particular skills expenditure. It would mean that when we then come to support the entity and do the audit and make sure that now we can express an opinion on the skills expenditure, the first question we would ask typically will just be, so how did we visit the entire population? So meaning, how comfortable are you that the 10 would have been either anomaly, if it is anomaly, or at least the rest that is remaining is valid, is accurate, is complete. So which would mean that when we then submitting the matters either to the Hawks or the SIU, whatever the case may be, you're submitting that particular case. And I think it will be probably difficult, and I wouldn't know how they work, but similar to audit, you probably cannot project a criminal case throughout, which would mean that then as a department, as an entity, you need to evaluate your entire pool and then have a conclusion and way forward that will also speaks to the consequence management element of that entire population. And I think that's primarily from the audit perspective, that even when we then approach the audit post this particular investigation, the first question would be, so how comfortable are we that the 10 is the only one? And if it's not the only one, how do we deal with the rest of the population? Thank you, Chair.
The more you said, the more complex and complicated this becomes. But it's not sounding like gibberish. It's sounding like a very substantive reality. So for the first time in the responses, let's get the DG. We'll come to the last time. Right, DG, if there's any responses that you would have, and then maybe paint a drive way forward. Colleagues, I've listened attentively to the things you've said. I'm drawing up a roadmap here. DG, okay. DM after the DG.
Chair, I think that in the minds of those listening to this conversation, and whether they're here or through media, I think they would feel more confident that we are all united against non-compliance, against crime, against corruption, and I think that is the message I've received up to now, and I'm grateful that this is the conclusion I can make on my own. I wish to take this opportunity to thank honorable members, all of them who have spoken. There is none of the issues you've raised that must not escape our attention going forward. If you allow me, I'll start with the Auditor General right from the end, because it will help me summarize. When you select 10 projects of a specific number, it is clear that the intention should be that you want to generalize on the rest of the population, and which therefore means ours is not just to focus on the 10 projects. And I think that is why, Honorable Hadebe, that in your question about the scope going forward, I think it is aligned to your question to what the Auditor General is saying. And it further explains to us and confirm to me that our approach is correct. Firstly, we have made it clear that, you see, when the Auditor General does the audit, they give you a management letter specifying the areas of the audit. But it's not everything that even the Auditor General looks at. It is the internal audit reports that covers the entire spectrum of the work that needs to be done. And so we've made it very clear in the panel that our interest is all audit findings. That is why I was very happy when the Auditor General worked with us in the establishment of the Audit Steering Committee that looks at the all requests for information, even those that were complied with not fully, those that were not complied with. And all of those officials are within the scope of what we are investigating. I was worried when we mentioned 5 suspended because I thought it might distort the picture and as if we now have 5. No, everyone will be under the scrutiny of our investigation. There is no person. Earlier on in my comments, when I mentioned that I can't understand how you approve a project without due diligence, particularly when it comes to establishing the readiness of markets for such a project with so much resources that we are allocating. I know that it is difficult for any accounting officer to make that call, but it's important to develop the capacity to do so within the system. And I'm very happy that all of these issues that I'm raising will appear in the Ministerial Task Team report, and we will be very happy to share this report with you, because it begins not only to confirm that there are systems which in the general conclusions of Nexus are clearly weak and they need to be looked into, whether it's monitoring systems, they are weak, and the non-compliance with the memorandum of agreement, it is not done. All of these are not general issues, they are specific and they are on our purview. So I wish to thank you sincerely for this. Indeed, to accept Honorable Hadebe, expediting the project is in our minds. I'm encouraged by the fact that when the minister was asked to comment on the issue of the forensic investigation versus SIU, he indeed indicated that at a particular point, it would be necessary that we work with the SIU. And I think that time is clearly upon us. And we do this with determination. And I don't think that there are any contradictions between us. We also understand that in your tone, Honorable Hadebe, you are also saying, notwithstanding that you've reported on what has been done, but it can be better in terms of the pace and turnarounds. And I think that is noted sincerely. And I trust that in further reports that we will be providing, it will be clear. I think establishing the systems has been a struggle for us. And it has been a struggle simply because we are working with the very same people who are probably implicated by the same report. And so when we are looking for a team to further investigate issues, it's the same people who you are looking at. And so that actually has been the big issue. And perhaps in our own reports, we might have been not been specific enough to indicate that actually that is the issue for us. And that's why we've tended to rely very much on working with the state agencies. And I was quite happy when we sat with the Hawks and they embraced the spirit of the recommendations. And may I indicate that all the reports which the Hawks have requested from us up to now, all of them, without any fail, have been submitted. What we can now say is that any other information, because we think there's much more, will be done. Honorable Somio, thank you very much for you make an observation about acting capacity within NSF to say, no matter what you do, if you have not improved that capacity, you still are going to be sitting at a very slow turnaround. We take your point, but we also hope that in our next report, when we show you how far we've come in appointing people, new, there would be clarity. We finalized, for example, the issue of appointment of the CFO, and we hope that one of these days we will announce and pronounce on that, and other key positions, which is not easy because in the majority of cases, some of the applicants are the people who actually must still be under the scrutiny of the very same issues that we are raising. The issue of risk management is huge. We definitely are going to make this a priority for us to say, even though we have, in details and in detail, develop a risk management strategy for this, but it needs to be looked into in the light of particularly the contributions by my colleague Andy Motibi regarding the what could be outstanding still beyond the point of what has been done, particularly the issue of civil matters which needs to still be pursued. We are aligned in the thinking, and I am sure, having worked with this team, it's not going to be difficult to arrive at a satisfactory, even conclusion on those matters. Honorable Mentor, your questions largely are directed to the Deputy Minister. I'm happy for that, and that they're not directed to me. But you do make one point, which the DG must respond to, which I think the AG has covered around the rest of other projects, which are not the 10 that are there. To say, actually, our focus must be not just these ones that are a sample, but it must be the entire system. I think we take that point and we accept it fully without any additions to it. Chairperson, I think overall, I think as a department, it might have appeared initially that there is some kind of reluctance on our side. There's some kind of slow movement. Maybe this might have been the case, Chair, but I'm hoping that going forward, you will see, make your own conclusion that we are determined to comply fully with the expectations of the people of South Africa. Thank you, Chair.
So I really hoped that DJ would say lastly, and then he said overall. All right, DM, over to you, and then we'll go to the general and the advocate if there's any comments that they want to make, and I've got a proposal, colleagues, I want to make.
Lastly, thank you, Chairperson, and thank you to the honourable members for the questions. I think the first point that I would like to make is I think from the observations that I think all the members have made together with the head of the Special Investigations Unit, is for the department to engage with the SIU, because I think rightly so, which I think it's also the point emphasized not only by the members but also by the Auditor General, that we have a sample of a sample, which obviously is indicative of what could potentially be a bigger problem. And I think that the the discussions between the department, the SIU, and everyone else involved should be, how do we get to the bottom of the problem, and also ensure that you know, this does not recur. And I think I fully agree with that. That discussion between ourselves, I mean, the department and the SIU, should happen. The SIU already has the report, and I think we've heard what their observations have been. Secondly, that we've been involved with the Auditor General in terms of ensuring that moving forward. I think that's the concern that Honorable Mentor has mentioned, that the work of the National Skills Fund continues, and potentially some of the people could have been implicated in all of this, you know, may probably continue working with the SIU. I mean, with the NSF, but I think the point of emphasis here is that we have been working with the Auditor General to ensure that we meet the requirements, the audit requirements, as it relates to the National Skills Fund, and I think we're beginning to see some improvements. And thirdly, that the ministerial task team on the review of the work of the NSF, that work has been finalized, and that we're looking into, you know, rolling out the implementation of the recommendations, consultations, and all of that are underway. And I think we'll be quite excited to hear what also what the view of the committee is based on that, because primarily, you know, beyond some of the operational issues which led to the findings, I think primarily part of the problem has been around the governance and structure of the National Skills Fund, and I think we, you know, are attending into those in haste. The discussion around the rationale, which is my last point, the choice of the investigative process. I think the discussion throughout, at least on our part, has been to try and see if we cannot have an expeditious process. And I think we have been quite open about that. And that by the time we came, I know the chairperson says that's the version of the department and ministry in terms of the chronology of events. But I think by the time we came to have an engagement with SCOPA, the process had already been initiated to appoint forensic investigation services. And I think the conclusion at the time, which we you know, are not opposed to, the conclusion at the time was that this process should continue because it had already been initiated, and that let's subject ourselves to what the outcomes of that process is, and that we obviously would not have anticipated, you know, some of the things that happened. But as I said, that I think it obviously makes sense that you know, this discussion between the Special Investigations Unit and also the department, on the basis of what has come out of the forensics investigations, should happen, so that we get to the root of the problem, and that whatever has happened, cannot be repeated. But I'm mentioning the fact that there are improvements precisely because over the last year or more, we have been investing time and resources in the National Skills Fund to ensure that we improve in the governance of the entire fund, but also in the manner in which projects are being rolled out, and we hoping that with time there would be positive outcomes in terms of the audit process as it relates to the audited the audit of the NSFAS, of the NSF. Both the in particular the CEO, the acting CEO, I think that there was that question. The acting CEO, although he was in one of the agencies in the same branch, but he's not. He was not within the National Skills Fund, and I think our intention is to, as part of the stabilization process, to ensure that we have full-time competence at a leadership level of the National Skills Fund. So as I started, Chair, lastly, that we're really willing to work with everyone involved to ensure that this matter is brought to finality, consequences are met, and that those who may have committed fraud and whatever other crimes are brought to book. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, DM. Lieutenant General. I must learn these titles correctly because there's Lieutenant General, Major General, General, Chairperson General. Lieutenant General Lebeya, over to you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. It is easy, Chairperson, when you address the generals, regardless of whether it is a Major General, Lieutenant General, or General, you address that as General. So the difference is only when it is in writing.
It's generally accepted. Yeah. All right. Let's.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. We would like to indicate in confirmation that on the 17th of this month, that is on Monday, when there was this engagement to request certain documents, and on Tuesday, certain documents were provided. There are others that will still be coming, so there is that engagement. We expect that finally all the documents that have been requested will be forthcoming. So I think that is the only area that I need to comment on. Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. And lastly, the head of unit.
Now, Honorable Chair, thank you for the last opportunity. We appreciate that. DM, thank you very much. So all we want to say is that as we engage with the department, of course, we will ensure that the scope, Honorable Hadebe, it's appropriately determined. Because in the proclamation, there's a legal requirement to say what scope from which year to which year, and then ensuring that, as the Auditor General and Honorable Mentor said, in terms of the population to be covered, so that we don't leave any other thing out. So, Honorable Chair, honorable members, thank you very much. I think that's all we wanted to say. I also wanted to acknowledge and just indicate to the committee that I omitted to introduce one of my colleagues who's joined online, Mr. Pranesh Maharaj. He'll be part of the team that meets the department because his division deals with the drafting of the proclamation. And he's already indicated to me in writing here that we need to ensure that we cover issues such as fruitless and wasteful expenditure, excessive overcharging, and all the other aspects. So all of those will be included as we draft the proclamation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, colleagues. I think largely the three areas emanate insofar as the process going forward. So there's a three-pronged approach. There's the departmental processes, which include disciplinary hearings and so on, which we must allow to go on as they are going on right now. Then there is the Hawks-led criminal investigations, which are already underway, so those must continue. The third aspect, which must now arise, is the SIU-led process on the civil litigations. So I think that's the third leg of this tripod, which needs to come into fruition. We are quite accepting that the department, SIU, we were quite comfortable the fact that the department is proceeding with disciplinary processes that must continue in earnest, as it should. And I think that General Libya confirms that work is being done and information is being sourced. So I think that must continue. Our only comfort is when the puzzle comes together and that the third leg gains traction. So I think that we would request DG, head of unit, that there's a meeting of diaries between the department and the SIU, and that a meeting is held within the next 14 days to fill in the third leg of this process. And then what we will do is then ask for our normal quarterly reports, colleagues from the different and various processes in terms of updates as to where the work is going on. What we will do is now sort of round up phase one of this matter to say audit outcomes have been received, they were disclaimed, we had a process, the department had a process, it culminated into a forensic investigation. We've received the report and we have satisfied ourselves in the main that work is being done, but that is only provided that the SIU DHET meeting takes place, which must then give us guidance in terms of the agreed upon approach to the SIU matters, because what we have now is work on the basis of a sample. The SIU investigation can't be a sample. You see, the sample is giving us an indicator that there's a problem. So that then there is nothing left to chance. What the department can't do, but the Hawks can do, then must happen. And what the department can't do, the SIU must do, and vice versa, that what they can't do, the department must do. So I think we would want to, from our part, refer now wholly whatever we need to do to the SIU, and that proclamation is drafted in earnest and as a matter of priority, so that we can bring this matter to a logical legal conclusion in terms of a process being at play. I want to, so I hope colleagues, you are agreeable to that roadmap, because generally, DM, we had initially wanted the SIU to do this investigation, but we were then, there was the issues around PFMA and appointing an investigator and so on. So another headache arose out of that. But there is a report now substantively which tells us that the 10 sampled projects all have a problem. Almost 5 billion rands. So I think if we can do it that way, then we will be fine. So we will only submit our report to the House once we've gotten feedback from the meeting that must take place within the next 14 days. I want to say, DG, on behalf of the committee, that whilst we are sensitive to legal due process and the rights of individuals, because I think it's important that our acceding to the request must also be viewed in the other context, not just the legalities that we looked at. The South African public is literally, for all intents and purposes, fed up with corruption. They've had it. So every time there's anything that seeks to suggest that wrongdoing is being promoted, we are agitating an agitated population already. And the expectation is that generally those of us who are new in whatever space must be the broom that sweeps clean. So my only advice is to say sometimes decisions must be viewed just from a lens of perception. And when we received that request, it didn't sit well with us, not just on the legal aspects, but when the Standing Committee on Public Accounts, and that's the operative word, public, must keep something confidential, it places us in a very difficult position. So I'm just encouraging that let's inspire public confidence with transparency and ensure that the public derives some sort of hope, as minimal as it might be, given the magnitude of corruption and state capture and whatever it is, that when something emerges, we bring it to the spotlight. Then if you do that, then you won't have problems. Let me take this opportunity to lastly thank my colleagues. Colleagues who've had a long week, have had a very productive week. I want to thank you for your hard work as well. We had wanted to schedule National Treasury for Tuesday to have a meeting on their non-tabling of the report and the dispute they have with AG. But the acting director general has requested that because of the PACT program they have for the MTPBS, that we find another date. We had wanted to meet Tuesday, the MTBS is on Wednesday. It would have really been an hour's meeting, but again, we'll see how we maneuver that. So, but that matter remains on the agenda. So we will still want to deal with that. So, but colleagues, thank you very much for a good week, and to our ever efficient support staff, Administrative Secretariat, Siyabonga. DM, thank you very much, DG, General, Advocate AG, and all colleagues. Sibamba ngazo zozibini, uNkulunkulu usanigcina nithanda nihlenga nilondoloze nihambe kahle. Amen.